14 and 15 years old. The interview occurred as Epstein, who once hobnobbed with some of the world's most powerful people, was facing federal charges for allegedly running a sex trafficking operation that lured dozens of underage girls, some as young as 14, to his homes in Manhattan and Palm Beach. Now, we report now that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. The news came this morning. Epstein, the financier and convicted sex offender, has been found dead in his cell in a suspected suicide. 3 officials familiar with the matter tell NBC News that Epstein was found dead at 7:30 a.m. this morning, dead by hanging. And just last month, Epstein was found injured in his cell after what was called a possible suicide attempt. The news of his death comes one day after newly unsealed court documents provided disturbing new details of what was going on inside Epstein's homes and how his associates recruited young women and girls. The documents were filed as part of a defamation lawsuit brought by one of Epstein's alleged victims in 2015 against a longtime confidant of Epstein's. Joining me now, NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk, Maria Hinojosa, Media Group, MSNBC legal analyst Danny Savalos, civil rights attorney Lisa Bloom, Maria Teresa Kumar of Voto Latino, and joining by phone Gabriel Sherman of Vanity Fair and MSNBC legal analyst Paul Butler. I'm going to go to you first, Stephanie, to get what we know. I asked earlier to Jonathan Dean, so I'll ask you the same question. Should we expect to hear a public statement from the people running this jail as to, one, whether or not Jeffrey Epstein was still on suicide watch? If not, why not? And if not, what was in the cell with him that he could have used to allegedly commit suicide?
Listen, Joy, I would imagine they will have to put out some kind of statement over the course of today. Whether you're going to get definitive answers on those questions specifically will be a big issue. An important thing to remember about this facility, this is the Metropolitan Corrections Center here in Manhattan. This is not a city-run or state-run facility. This is a federal-run facility, Department of Justice. So you would expect to hear also from the Department of Justice on this. You can imagine that there will be an investigation launched. The big question, how is it that someone who they suspected may have tried to take his own life just a matter of weeks ago was actually able to take his own life last night?
And wait, hold on a second. Can we just say this again? So this facility is run by the Department of Justice, meaning William Barr's
That's
Department
correct.
of Justice?
And on top of it, it is a facility that has been relied on to hold some very high-profile prisoners, including El Chapo. I believe Manafort was there. Paul Manafort was held there for a period of time. It is considered to be a very secure place. I mean, El Chapo escaped from prison a number of times. They weren't going to throw him into something where he would have that opportunity again. This is supposed to be a top-notch facility. Again, how did it happen? That investigation is got to be launched soon.
Okay, that's strange. That's strange. Let me actually come to you, Maria, because, okay, that's strange. You know, typically someone, I have a lot of friends, friends who are police officers, my godbrothers, police. I'm not a police officer, obviously. I have no personal, knowledge of the way it works. But my understanding was always that in a case of sex offense, a sex offender being put into a facility such as this, either solo, right? But we're told he was put in with a roommate, which sounded odd just to my ear. And then after allegedly attempting something, either suicide or he was harmed before, then he goes into a solo cell, and then he's somehow alone and able to allegedly commit suicide. It sounds odd to me.
So I just got off the phone with one of my sources, who's somebody who spent 31 years in prison, and then recently was actually in prison in the same block as Bill Cosby. And so that's a pretty specialized, high-profile person. How was he being treated? How is he treated? So Bill Cosby is watched every 15 minutes, right? He's checked on every 15 minutes. Even if he's in population, he's checked on every 15 minutes. That's the first thing. The other thing that this person told me said, there is no way to hang yourself in a prison cell. There's just no place to put anything. And if you think just go into a room that's kind of like, I don't know, an office space right here at MSNBC. I walked in, I was like, there's no place to hang yourself. So it's illogical. He also said that, I said, well, how could something like this happen? And this is where it starts getting pretty complicated, right, in terms of the evidence, in terms of will there be pictures of the body? Will we have the coroner's report? Will we see everything that was in the room? Again, we don't have this information, but as somebody who spent 31 years in a prison and knows the prison culture, he said, these are people who will be targeted. If Epstein had been in general population, he would have been targeted. what does this mean? It means who were the CEOs? Where is the footage is what we need to be asking. We need to start putting Freedom of Information Act requests for the footage. We need to be doubly sure that this is the footage exactly where he was being held. That's one way that you can prove. By the way, I did cover a story, the strange death of Jose de Jesus, who was on suicide watch in Eloy Detention Facility in Arizona, and he did commit suicide. While he was on suicide, he swallowed his sock, because that was the only way that he could do it, because there's no place to hang anything.
Right.
So there are a lot of questions, and people in prison understand that this sounds very, very fishy. And of course, we're just getting official reports from the prison.
And you know, Paul Butler, I'm going to go to Paul Butler first, and then I'm going to come to Danny. But because you raised the question earlier in the hour, just about all the questions that need to be asked. This is somebody who not only is high profile, who not only knew a lot of high profile people, whose papers just came out of court, just to let out some of the documents related to his cases that name high profile people, who was friends with the current president of the United States, who flew the previous president of the United States around on his plane, who is alleged to have trafficked girls to a member of the royal family of Britain. Okay, this is not this is you know, on the same level like a Bill Cosby. This is a famous person who's now in prison. He knows a lot about a lot of people, and as you said earlier, his only out at this point would be to talk about those people. So he's in this very vulnerable situation. And then you throw in the fact, which I did not know until thank God Stephanie Gosk was sitting here and told me this, that this is now a facility under the control of the Department of Justice. And this Department of Justice does not exactly inspire confidence. Let's just be blunt. William Barr's Justice Department is not one that you can readily simply rely upon and feel confident in. And so what do we make of all this now that in this federal facility, this person was allowed to be alone long enough to either harm himself or be killed by someone? We don't know what happened. We don't know. We just don't know what happened. But your thoughts?
That's exactly right, Joy. So the investigation, we noted, will include, could another inmate have been set up to take Epstein's life? It should also include, was Mr. Epstein himself, was his suicide facilitated or in some way allowed to happen? Authorities must have known that Mr. Epstein was a prime candidate for taking his own life. Why? Because of his difficult adjustment to jail, his depression, his bleak outlook in the criminal case. He was almost certainly going to be locked up for the rest of his life, and his previous suicide attempt. And so, again, this isn't, you know, I could say South Mississippi jail because we know from a recent report how horrid and wretched the conditions are in Mississippi jails. This was a federal prison operated by the United States Department of Justice. How was this allowed to happen? And again, the question must be asked, was Mr. Epstein somehow allowed or set up to take his own life?
Danny Cevallos, you had somebody who attempted to